The bright lights of the studio shone down on the stage, reflecting off the polished wood floor and the grand piano that sat at its center. The audience was buzzing with excitement, whispering to each other, and the hum of cameras moving around filled the air. Behind the scenes, a young pianist took deep, steadying breaths, trying to calm the storm of nerves inside. This was the moment she had dreamed of for years, and yet, standing here, she felt the weight of every expectation pressing down on her. She had been practicing since she could barely reach the piano keys. Her fingers remembered every note, every nuance, every emotion the music demanded. Her parents had always been supportive, but they also knew the importance of discipline. They had watched her spend hours in her small room at home, fingers flying over the keys until her hands ached, and still she would not stop until the piece was perfect. This performance was supposed to show all that hard work, all the time she had poured into music, but the fear of failing in front of a live audience and a famous maestro made her stomach twist into knots. As she walked onto the stage, the crowd seemed to grow larger, the lights brighter, and the pressure heavier. She could hear the murmur of the audience, the whispers of cameras, the soft click of photographers snapping pictures. Every step toward the piano felt like walking through a storm. Her dress brushed against the polished floor, and she felt the chill of the studio air make her fingers tingle. Sitting down at the piano bench, she took another deep breath, letting it out slowly. She could do this. She had to do this. The maestro, known for his sharp critiques and unforgiving standards, was seated at the side of the stage. His eyes were focused, almost piercing, as if he could see every thought racing through her mind. The audience watched him as closely as they watched her, knowing he had the power to make or break a performance. The young pianist glanced at him for a moment and quickly looked away. She could not let his presence shake her focus. She had practiced for this moment, imagined it over and over in her mind, and now it was time to bring that imagination to life. The first notes she played were soft, tentative, like a whisper, but gradually they gained confidence, flowing smoothly under her fingers. She felt the music rise through her, filling her with warmth and a sense of calm. The audience seemed to lean in, listening, captivated by the delicate beauty of her playing. For a few moments, she felt as if the whole world had faded away, leaving only her and the music. Every chord, every delicate trill, every gentle pause was a part of her story, and she told it without words. The piece was challenging, demanding precision and emotion, and she poured every ounce of her skill into it. Her fingers danced across the keys, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, always with intent and feeling. She felt the music in her heart and let it guide her hands. The applause from earlier rehearsals echoed in her mind, giving her courage, even as her nerves threatened to take over. She had faced moments like this before, but never with so many eyes watching, never with a maestro scrutinizing her every move. As she continued, she felt a growing connection with the audience. She could sense their admiration, their curiosity, and their support. Each note she played seemed to draw them closer, creating an invisible thread between her heart and theirs. She smiled slightly, feeling a quiet joy at sharing her music, at being understood without saying a word. This was why she played, why she had dedicated so much of her life to the piano. Music was not just notes on a page. It was a way to speak, to touch people, to make them feel. Then, almost suddenly, the maestro interrupted. His voice was sharp, cutting through the delicate atmosphere like a knife. He criticized her technique, pointing out flaws with a tone that left no room for discussion or encouragement. The words felt heavy, like stones landing on her chest, and for a moment she froze. The audience gasped, shifting uncomfortably in their seats, unsure of how to react. The young pianist's hands trembled slightly, her confidence shaken, her heart racing. She could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on her, some filled with sympathy, some with judgment. For a brief moment, she considered stopping, walking away, letting the embarrassment swallow her. But deep inside, a spark of determination flickered. She remembered why she had come here, all the hours of practice, all the small victories, all the sacrifices. This was not just a performance. It was a chance to prove to herself that she belonged, that her talent and passion were real and worthy of recognition. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and focused her mind. She could not let one person's harsh words define her. She would respond through the music itself, letting it speak louder than criticism ever could. She took another deep breath and resumed playing, this time with more confidence, more emotion. She allowed herself to feel the music fully, to let it guide her hands and her heart. Each note was deliberate, each chord precise, yet filled with feeling. The audience watched in awe as she transformed the tension into beauty, turning what could have been a moment of shame into a moment of artistry. She felt a quiet triumph, a sense of control returning as she poured herself into the performance. Her fingers moved faster, then slower, as the music demanded, carrying both technical skill and emotional depth. She could hear the change in the audience, the soft murmurs of admiration, the collective holding of breath as they followed her every move. Even the maestro's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of surprise passing over his face. She did not look at him, did not seek his approval, but focused entirely on the music and the story she wanted to tell. Every note became a statement of resilience, every chord a declaration that she would not be shaken by humiliation. Time seemed to stretch as she played, the minutes passing like seconds, the room holding its breath with her. When she finally reached the end of the piece, she let the last note linger, letting it fade naturally, leaving a moment of silence that felt almost sacred. The audience erupted into applause, not polite but heartfelt, recognizing the skill, courage, and emotion she had poured into the performance. She sat at the piano, chest heaving, hands slightly trembling, but a sense of pride and accomplishment filled her. She had faced fear and doubt and had turned it into something beautiful. As she stood to leave the stage, the applause continued, and she caught a few glimpses of smiling faces in the crowd. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a quiet satisfaction that came not from approval, but from knowing she had given her best. Behind the cameras, in the wings of the stage, her mentor nodded proudly, recognizing the strength and talent that had carried her through a moment that could have broken her. Walking off the stage, she knew that this was only the beginning. The humiliation she had faced was real, but so was her determination, her skill, and her love for music. She had taken a step forward, proving to herself that she could rise above criticism and continue to shine. The experience had been intense, emotional, and exhausting, but it had also been empowering. She felt ready to face whatever came next, confident that her music could speak louder than words, stronger than doubt, and braver than fear. Backstage, she allowed herself a small smile, feeling a quiet joy at having survived and triumphed over a moment that could have been crushing. She knew the journey ahead would be long and challenging, but she also knew that she had the strength to continue. Her fingers had danced across the keys with precision and emotion. Her heart had guided her through fear, and her music had spoken the words she could not say. She was ready for the next chapter, ready to show the world that a young pianist with courage and talent could face anything, even the harshest critics, and come out stronger on the other side. The studio was alive with excitement, but for the young pianist, the atmosphere felt heavier now, like a weight pressing down on her shoulders. She had returned to the piano after her brief pause, trying to steady her breathing and collect her thoughts. But the words of the maestro still echoed in her mind. They were sharp, cutting, and humiliating, and even though she knew they did not define her, they were hard to shake. Every critic's remark she had ever heard in her life seemed to join in, making her question herself in ways she never had before. The audience had gone quiet, watching her, waiting for what would happen next. Some faces were sympathetic, others curious, and a few seemed almost entertained by the drama unfolding on stage. The young pianist felt the room shrinking around her, every eye fixed on her, every whisper of doubt magnified in her mind. Her hands hovered above the keys, trembling slightly, and for a moment she considered giving up. But then she remembered all the years of practice, the nights she had spent learning the most difficult pieces, the mornings when she woke early to perfect a single note. She had worked too hard to let this moment slip away. The maestro leaned forward slightly in his chair, eyes sharp, clearly expecting a falter. His criticism had been public, intended to embarrass, and perhaps to test her resolve. The young pianist felt a rush of emotions. Anger, fear, determination, and pride all mixed together. She realized that how she responded now would define not just this performance, but her confidence and sense of self as a musician. She took a deep breath, letting it fill her chest, and slowly exhaled, allowing the tension to release bit by bit. She decided to let the music speak instead of her words. The piano keys waited for her touch, and she felt a surge of focus as she pressed down the first notes of a new section. The melody flowed carefully at first, each note deliberate and clear, like a statement. She would not be broken by humiliation. The audience leaned forward again, sensing a shift, their curiosity growing. The young pianist's fingers moved with precision, yet now there was something different, a quiet strength that had not been there at the start. As she continued to play, she remembered why she loved music. It was not about impressing the maestro, the audience, or anyone else. It was about expressing herself, about sharing a piece of her soul through sound. Each note became a small rebellion against the fear that had tried to control her, each chord a statement of resilience. The audience could feel it, the way a live performance carries emotion beyond words. Some faces softened, some eyes glistened, and even the maestro's stern expression showed a flicker of surprise. The young pianist's mind worked to block out the earlier embarrassment. She focused on the rhythm, the flow, and the story of the piece she was playing. She remembered the countless hours spent in her small room at home, practicing alone, learning to express joy, sadness, and hope through her music. Those memories gave her courage. The music became more than just notes. It became a bridge between her heart and everyone watching. She allowed herself to feel every emotion deeply and channel it into her performance. Meanwhile, the audience's reaction was changing. The initial shock of the maestro's words had faded, replaced by admiration and anticipation. People leaned forward, held their breath, and let the young pianist's music fill the space between them. Her playing was no longer just a performance. It was a conversation, one that required no words but spoke volumes. Each phrase she played seemed to respond to the earlier criticism, not angrily, but with quiet confidence and undeniable skill. The maestro shifted in his chair, a slight frown still on his face, but the sharpness in his eyes was mixed now with curiosity. He had seen many performers, but few with the courage to continue after being publicly humiliated. He recognized, perhaps unwillingly, that this young pianist was different. She did not crumble, she did not apologize, and she did not falter. She played with honesty, and that honesty demanded attention and respect. As the piece progressed, the young pianist's confidence grew. She began to take more risks, adding subtle dynamics, delicate phrasing, and expressive flourishes that showcased her skill. The music became more powerful, carrying a message that transcended the earlier embarrassment. She realized that this was not just about proving herself to the maestro. It was about proving to herself that she could rise above fear, that she could remain true to her passion no matter the obstacles. The studio seemed to fade around her. She no longer noticed the bright lights, the cameras, or even the audience as separate entities. She was fully immersed in the music, her fingers dancing across the keys with control and freedom. Every note was a testament to her dedication, every chord a reminder that she had earned this moment through hard work and perseverance. The tension that had gripped her at the beginning of the performance had transformed into energy, a force that carried her forward with grace and strength. Backstage, her mentor watched with a mixture of pride and relief. The young pianist had faced the harshest of criticisms and had responded not with anger or tears, but with mastery and resilience. The mentor knew that this experience would shape her, not just as a performer, but as a person. The ability to withstand humiliation, to turn it into art, was rare and precious. The mentor silently encouraged her to continue, to keep pouring herself into the music, knowing that the young pianist was capable of remarkable things. In the audience, the mood shifted further. People were no longer focused on the maestro's harsh words, but on the courage and talent displayed before them. Whispers of admiration replaced murmurs of shock. The music captivated everyone, drawing them into a story told entirely through sound. Some audience members felt their hearts swell with emotion. Others felt inspired by the young pianist's bravery. The performance had become a shared experience, one that left a lasting impression on everyone present. The maestro remained silent, but the tension in his posture relaxed slightly. He listened carefully, no longer looking to criticize, but to understand the depth of talent in front of him. He had underestimated the young pianist, and he could not help but acknowledge, even silently, that she possessed skill, courage, and artistry that demanded respect. His eyes followed every movement of her hands, his mind taking in the precision, emotion, and expression she conveyed. As the piece reached its climax, the young pianist felt a surge of exhilaration. She played with abandon, letting the music reach its fullest potential, combining technical skill with emotional depth. The audience responded with gasps, whispers of awe, and eyes wide with admiration. Every note she struck seemed to assert her presence, her determination, and her identity as a musician who refused to be silenced or diminished. The room vibrated with the intensity of the moment, a testament to the power of talent meeting courage. Finally, she brought the piece to its conclusion, letting the final chord resonate and fade naturally. The silence that followed was brief but profound, as if the audience collectively held its breath in reverence for what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, applause erupted, first hesitant, then growing louder and more enthusiastic. It was not merely polite clapping. It was genuine recognition of skill, perseverance, and artistry. The young pianist felt her chest swell with pride, her heart beating rapidly but steadily, knowing that she had faced one of the most difficult moments of her life and had emerged triumphant. The maestro, for the first time, allowed a small nod of approval. Though his expression remained composed, there was a trace of respect that had not been there before. The young pianist had not only survived his criticism but had transformed it into an opportunity to showcase her talent and courage. She had proven that skill, dedication, and heart could overcome even the most public humiliation. In that moment, she felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that she had remained true to herself and to the music she loved. Backstage, she was met with smiles, quiet congratulations, and a few tears from those who had been moved by her performance. Her mentor embraced her, proud of the resilience and determination she had shown. The experience had been intense and emotionally exhausting, but it had also been empowering. She realized that humiliation, while painful, could be a catalyst for growth, courage, and artistry. The young pianist had faced the harshest criticism and had responded with beauty, skill, and heart. As she walked away from the stage, she knew that this moment would remain with her forever. She had confronted fear, embarrassment, and doubt, and had transformed them into a performance that would be remembered. The audience had seen not just a young pianist, but a musician with courage, dedication, and an unshakable spirit. The maestro had seen it too, and perhaps in his own way, he had learned something about the power of resilience and talent. The young pianist's journey was far from over, but she had taken a significant step forward. She had faced a challenge that could have broken her, and instead, she had grown stronger, more confident, and more certain of her own abilities. The applause still echoed in her mind as she left the studio, a reminder that courage, skill, and heart could shine even in the darkest moments of doubt and humiliation. Backstage, away from the bright lights and the watchful eyes of the audience, the young pianist finally had a moment to breathe. Her heart was still racing, her hands tingling from the energy of the performance, but her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. She replayed every moment in her head, the sharp words of the maestro, the judgment in his eyes, the flicker of surprise as she continued playing. For a brief instant, doubt crept in, whispering that perhaps she had not been good enough, that maybe the humiliation she had faced meant she was not ready for this stage. But deep down, a different voice spoke, a voice of perseverance, of courage, and of love for music. She leaned against the wall of the dressing area, taking slow, steady breaths. The adrenaline that had surged through her veins during the performance was now settling into a steady rhythm, and she began to reflect on why she had chosen this path. Music had always been more than a skill or a hobby. It was a part of her, a language through which she could communicate her feelings, hopes, and dreams. The piano had been her companion through lonely nights, her guide when words failed, and her solace in times of confusion. The fear she had felt moments ago was natural, but it did not define her. What defined her was the courage to continue despite it. Her mentor appeared quietly, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. There was no rush, no pressure, just a calm presence that reminded her she was not alone. "You have something they can't take away," the mentor said softly. "You have your talent, your heart, and your courage. Remember that." The young pianist nodded, feeling the weight of those words sink in. It was true. The maestro's criticism, harsh as it was, could not erase years of dedication or the love she had for music. She realized that the moment of humiliation, though painful, had shown her the strength she didn't fully know she possessed. In the quiet of the backstage area, she thought about the countless hours she had spent practicing. The small victories, the mistakes, the moments of frustration and triumph, all of them had led her to this point. She remembered how she had struggled with difficult pieces, how her fingers had bled from relentless practice, and how she had persisted even when she felt she could not go on. Those experiences were her foundation, and they were stronger than any single moment of public criticism. She closed her eyes, imagining the keys beneath her fingers, and let herself feel the music flow once again in her mind. It was a reminder that her talent was hers, unshaken by anyone's words. The young pianist also reflected on the audience. She realized that most people in the room had not come to see her fail. They had come to witness music, to feel something powerful through her performance. Their presence, their attentive silence, and their eventual applause were proof that her music had touched them. The fear of embarrassment had been magnified in her mind, but the reality was different. She had an opportunity to connect with others through her art, and that connection was far more significant than the harsh judgment of a single individual. She thought about the maestro as well, the man whose reputation for strict criticism had intimidated countless performers before her. At first, she had felt crushed under the weight of his words, but as she reflected, she saw a different perspective. Perhaps he was challenging her not to humiliate, but to test her resilience, to see if she could rise above fear. The realization did not erase the sting of his words, but it gave her a sense of purpose. She was not just performing for applause. She was performing to prove to herself that she could withstand pressure, criticism, and doubt, and still create something beautiful. As she stood there, she began to plan her next move. She knew that the upcoming part of the show would demand not just skill, but creativity and courage. The maestro might not expect her to take risks, to play pieces that challenged both her technique and his assumptions about her abilities. She allowed herself a small smile at the thought. This was her chance to show not only her talent, but her resilience, her imagination, and her heart. The memory of her earlier hesitation now felt like a distant shadow compared to the growing determination within her. She thought about the music she could play, the pieces she had practiced in secret, the ones that pushed her limits and made her feel alive. These pieces were more than exercises. They were stories she had created and nurtured, waiting for the right moment to be shared. She realized that choosing one of these pieces could turn the tables, transforming the situation from one of humiliation into a statement of her artistry and confidence. The anticipation of performing something unexpected gave her courage and ignited a spark of excitement. She felt ready to step back into the spotlight and let her music speak where words could not. The young pianist also reflected on her journey up to this point. She remembered the early days of learning, the times when she had struggled to reach notes and make them sound beautiful. She remembered the mentors, teachers, and family who had supported her, the encouragement that had helped her persist. Those memories reminded her that success was not measured by a single performance or the opinion of one person. It was measured by growth, effort, and the willingness to keep going despite obstacles. She felt gratitude for every challenge she had faced, because they had shaped her into the musician she was today. She took a few moments to center herself, placing her hands gently on the piano keys, as if reconnecting with an old friend. The smooth surface beneath her fingers brought a sense of calm and focus. She closed her eyes and imagined the melody she wanted to play, feeling it resonate in her chest and spread through her fingertips. Every note was already alive in her mind, waiting to emerge. The thought gave her courage. She knew that when she returned to the stage, she could channel all of her emotion, skill, and determination into the music, letting it tell her story. Her mentor stayed nearby, offering quiet encouragement without words, a reminder that she was supported and capable. The young pianist felt a growing sense of resolve, a quiet strength that rose from her own experience, preparation, and passion. She realized that she was not defined by fear or humiliation. She was defined by her willingness to try, to persist, and to express herself through music. The lesson was clear. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. In those moments of reflection, she also considered the audience once more. She understood that they were waiting for her to continue, for her to demonstrate not just technical ability, but artistry and heart. She wanted to give them something memorable, something that would move them and perhaps inspire them. The thought of connecting with others through her music, of sharing a piece of herself that could touch hearts, strengthened her resolve. This was why she had chosen music, why she had dedicated so much time and effort to learning and practicing. It was not for approval, but for expression and connection. The young pianist felt a sense of clarity settle over her. She no longer felt paralyzed by the maestro's words or the fear of failure. Instead, she felt a quiet determination, a sense of purpose, and a readiness to act. She had faced doubt and humiliation, reflected on her journey, and drawn strength from her past experiences and her love of music. The next time she stepped onto the stage, she would do so with confidence, focus, and courage, ready to let her music speak louder than any criticism. As the cue for the next segment approached, she positioned herself at the piano, taking a final deep breath. She felt the familiar weight of nerves mixed with excitement, but this time it was tempered by resolve. She knew that the next performance would require everything she had: technique, emotion, courage, and creativity, but she felt ready. The earlier humiliation had not broken her. It had strengthened her, sharpened her focus, and clarified her purpose. She lifted her fingers above the keys, letting the silence in the studio deepen, allowing the anticipation to settle in. Every note she would play from here on would carry meaning, intention, and heart. She felt ready to face the maestro again, to show him and the audience what she was capable of when fear was transformed into determination. In that quiet, intense moment, the young pianist knew that she had discovered something important: the power to rise above doubt, to channel emotion into art, and to trust herself no matter what challenges lay ahead. The lights of the studio seemed sharper as the young pianist walked back onto the stage. Her chest rose and fell with steady breaths, each inhalation and exhalation a way to claim calm in the midst of chaos. The audience watched with quiet anticipation, their earlier reactions now replaced by curiosity. They had seen the harsh words, the unexpected interruption, and the hesitant return. Now they waited to see what she would do next. There was a mix of tension and excitement in the air that pressed on her, but she held herself tall, ready to face it with resolve. The maestro's eyes were fixed on her, still sharp, still critical, but there was now a glimmer of intrigue. He leaned slightly forward, as if anticipating her next move. He expected hesitation, perhaps even failure. What he did not expect was the quiet determination in her posture, the calm confidence that radiated from her presence. She placed her hands on the piano keys, letting the smooth surface reassure her, grounding her in the familiar sensation that had carried her through years of practice. She began to play, softly at first, letting the notes float like a whisper through the studio. This was not the cautious beginning of someone unsure of herself. This was deliberate, purposeful, a gentle invitation into the music she had chosen. The piece was challenging, complex, and she had practiced it tirelessly in private, mastering not just the technical difficulty but the emotion behind it. Each note carried meaning, each phrase a story. She let the music flow naturally, her fingers dancing across the keys with precision and fluidity. The audience leaned forward, captivated by the subtle beauty of the performance. They sensed the confidence in her playing, the expression of her emotions through each chord, and the narrative that unfolded without words. The music seemed to stretch across the room, drawing everyone in, enveloping them in a quiet intimacy. People whispered to themselves, moved by the depth of feeling, the skill, and the courage it took to play with such honesty in the aftermath of public humiliation. The young pianist's mind was focused entirely on the music. She was aware of the maestro's presence, but she did not let it control her. Instead, she let it fuel her determination, transforming pressure into energy, doubt into clarity. Her fingers moved faster and slower as the piece demanded, showing mastery of dynamics, rhythm, and expression. She felt the music in her chest and arms, guiding her hands and shaping the performance into something beyond mere technical display. She allowed herself to feel the story of the piece fully, letting each note carry her emotions. There was joy, there was melancholy, there was triumph, and there was longing. Every phrase she played was infused with these emotions, and she could sense the audience feeling them too. Their reactions were subtle at first, slight shifts in posture, quiet gasps, attentive silence, but gradually, the energy in the room began to change. The tension and curiosity transformed into admiration and awe. The maestro, initially rigid in his seat, began to lean closer. His eyes, once filled with critical appraisal, now showed recognition of the skill and heart in her performance. He had underestimated her resilience and the depth of her talent. There was no longer a sharpness in his expression, only focused attention, perhaps a hint of respect. The young pianist did not look at him, choosing instead to remain immersed in the music. She knew the power of this moment lay in her ability to convey emotion and mastery without seeking approval. As the piece progressed, she introduced subtle flourishes and intricate passages that demonstrated both technical skill and emotional depth. The audience was visibly moved, some leaning forward in their seats, others with hands covering their mouths in awe. She could feel their collective attention, their silent admiration, and it strengthened her resolve. She had chosen a piece that was unfamiliar to many, including the maestro, one that required courage to attempt in a live setting. Every note she struck was a testament to her dedication, her hours of practice, and her refusal to be diminished by prior humiliation. The young pianist allowed herself to experience a quiet joy as the music flowed. The technical mastery was important, but it was the connection with the audience and the expression of her feelings that gave the performance its power. She remembered the long nights of practice, the quiet solitude, the perseverance through mistakes, and the love for the piano that had never faltered. Each memory added strength to her playing, infusing the music with authenticity that resonated with everyone listening. Backstage, her mentor watched with a sense of quiet pride. They could see the transformation, the courage it took to rise from embarrassment and create something so moving. The young pianist was no longer simply responding to criticism. She was transcending it, turning challenge into artistry. The mentor understood that this performance would leave a lasting impression, both on the audience and on the young pianist herself. It was a defining moment, a testament to resilience, talent, and heart. The audience's energy grew as the piece built to its climax. The music became bolder, more expressive, carrying the emotional weight of the performance to its fullest. Every chord, every trill, every dramatic pause was intentional, a statement of skill and courage. People were captivated, unable to look away, moved by the honesty and power of the music. The young pianist could feel the connection, the invisible thread linking her emotions to theirs. This was what she had hoped for, a shared experience where music spoke louder than words. The maestro's expression softened further. He no longer looked like a critic. He looked like an observer witnessing exceptional talent. There was a sense of humility in his gaze, a recognition that this young pianist had achieved something remarkable. She had not only defended herself against public criticism, but had elevated the moment into an unforgettable display of artistry. The performance was no longer about proving herself. It was about sharing the full extent of her talent, courage, and heart. As the piece approached its conclusion, the young pianist's hands moved with confidence and grace, bringing every element of the composition together. The audience felt the tension, the release, the culmination of the story told through music. The final chords were struck with precision and emotion, held just long enough to resonate, and then allowed to fade naturally. Silence filled the studio for a heartbeat, a collective pause to absorb what had just been experienced. Then, the applause erupted. It was thunderous, heartfelt, and genuine. The audience rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, and expressing admiration for the courage, talent, and emotion they had witnessed. The young pianist felt a surge of triumph, relief, and joy. She had faced the harshest criticism, the pressure of live performance, and her own fears, and had created something extraordinary in response. The music had spoken louder than words, louder than doubt, louder than humiliation. The maestro stood slowly, clapping in acknowledgement. There was no longer critique in his gaze, only respect. He had been surprised, perhaps humbled, by the depth of skill and courage displayed. The young pianist did not need his approval, but his recognition felt like confirmation of her resilience and artistry. The moment was complete. She had turned a situation designed to embarrass into a triumph of talent and spirit. Backstage, people congratulated her quietly, some moved to tears by the performance. Her mentor embraced her, proud and relieved. The young pianist felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond applause or recognition. She had proven to herself that fear and humiliation could be transformed into creativity and courage. Every note she had played carried her journey, her dedication, and her heart. As she left the stage, she felt lighter, stronger, and more confident than ever before. She had faced a challenge that could have crushed her spirit, and instead, she had elevated it. The experience had taught her that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. She knew that this moment would stay with her forever, a reminder that talent, perseverance, and heart could overcome any obstacle, even public humiliation. The young pianist had not just performed, she had triumphed. The applause still echoed in the studio when the young pianist finally rose from the piano bench. Her hands were slightly trembling, but her chest felt full, her heart lighter than it had been in days. The performance had been more than she had imagined. It had been a declaration, a statement of who she was, what she could do, and the courage she carried within her. The audience continued clapping, some rising to their feet, and the energy in the room was electric. She had faced one of the hardest moments of her life and turned it into a triumph, not just for herself, but for everyone who had witnessed it. The maestro stood slowly, joining the applause, and this time his expression carried genuine respect. There was no trace of the sharp criticism from earlier, no sign of the dismissive demeanor he had worn. He had seen something in the young pianist that demanded acknowledgement. Slowly he approached, walking with a measured, deliberate pace. The audience watched, curious and silent, sensing the gravity of this moment. When he reached her, he nodded and spoke quietly, almost as if reluctant to admit it aloud. "That was extraordinary," he said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. They acknowledged not just her technical skill, but the courage and heart that had driven her performance. The young pianist nodded in response, a small, humble smile on her lips. She did not need approval, yet hearing his recognition felt like the final affirmation that her perseverance had paid off. She remembered the fear and humiliation she had felt earlier, the uncertainty that had made her hands tremble, and she realized how far she had come. It was a powerful lesson. Courage, determination, and belief in oneself could transform fear into achievement. She felt proud, not just of the performance, but of herself for refusing to give in to doubt. Backstage, her mentor embraced her, offering quiet words of praise and pride. The young pianist felt warmth and gratitude, recognizing the importance of having someone who believed in her when she doubted herself. The mentor's presence, support, and encouragement had been a lifeline, a reminder that she was not alone and that her talent was worthy of nurturing. She realized that this journey had been shaped not only by her effort but by the guidance and encouragement of those who had stood by her, believing in her potential even when she questioned it herself. As she stepped away from the piano, she noticed the audience's reaction. Many were still clapping, some with tears in their eyes, others smiling with admiration. She had touched them with her music, and that connection felt more meaningful than any words could express. The applause was not just for the notes she had played. It was for the courage, the emotion, and the honesty she had shared through her performance. She understood now that music had the power to convey what words could not, to reach hearts, and to leave a lasting impression. The young pianist reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She remembered the long hours of practice, the mistakes, the small victories, and the relentless pursuit of improvement. Every challenge she had faced had contributed to her growth, preparing her for moments like this. The humiliation she had experienced earlier, though painful, had forced her to draw on her inner strength, to trust herself, and to rise above fear. It was a transformative experience, one that had shown her the depth of her own resilience. The maestro, now standing a few steps away, watched quietly. His respect for her talent and determination was evident, and he seemed to understand that this performance was more than a demonstration of skill. It was a statement of character. The young pianist had shown that talent alone was not enough. It was courage, perseverance, and heart that truly defined a musician. She had faced criticism and doubt, yet she had turned the experience into an opportunity to shine, and the result was undeniable. As the applause gradually subsided, the young pianist felt a sense of calm and fulfillment. She had faced one of the most challenging moments of her life and emerged stronger, more confident, and more certain of her abilities. The experience had taught her that setbacks, humiliation, and fear were not the end of the journey, but opportunities for growth and self-discovery. She had learned to trust herself, to believe in her own talent, and to use her music as a means of expression and connection. The audience began to stand, giving a final round of applause. The young pianist bowed gracefully, acknowledging their admiration and appreciation. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the opportunity to perform, to share her music, and to connect with others on such a profound level. The experience had been intense and emotional, but it had also been empowering. She realized that true success was not measured by the absence of fear or criticism, but by the courage to continue, to persevere, and to express oneself fully. Backstage, the mentor guided her to a quieter area where she could finally breathe without the pressure of cameras and audience eyes. The young pianist sat down, reflecting on the performance, the journey, and the lessons she had learned. She felt a sense of pride that was deeper than any applause or recognition. It was the pride of having faced fear, of having transformed humiliation into a triumph, and of having remained true to herself and her art. This moment would stay with her forever, a reminder of what she was capable of when she trusted herself. The young pianist thought about the future. She knew that challenges would continue to come, that criticism and doubt were inevitable, but she felt prepared to face them with courage and determination. She understood now that her music was not just a skill or a performance. It was an expression of who she was, a bridge between her emotions and the world. She resolved to continue honing her craft, to take risks, and to embrace every opportunity to grow as a musician and as a person. The applause and admiration from the audience had shown her the power of vulnerability and courage. By sharing her talent and emotions openly, she had inspired others and created a memorable experience. She realized that the true reward of her journey was not simply recognition or approval, but the ability to connect with others through her music and to express her heart authentically. Every note she played, every piece she mastered, and every challenge she faced would contribute to that ongoing journey of self-expression and growth. The maestro approached her once more, this time with a slight smile and a nod of acknowledgement. Though brief, it carried significance. It was a recognition of her skill, her determination, and her heart. It was a reminder that even those who seem harsh or critical can be won over by talent and courage. The young pianist felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that she had faced one of the most challenging moments of her life and had emerged stronger, more confident, and more capable than before. As she left the studio, The young pianist felt a sense of completion and triumph. The journey had been long and difficult, filled with challenges, doubts, and moments of fear, but it had also been rewarding, transformative, and empowering. She had learned the importance of perseverance, the value of self-belief, and the strength that comes from facing fear head-on. The experience had shown her that true growth comes from overcoming obstacles, embracing vulnerability, and remaining committed to one's passions. Walking away from the stage, she felt a quiet sense of joy and accomplishment. The experience had not only tested her as a musician, but had also shaped her character, teaching her lessons that would last a lifetime. She knew that future challenges would come, but she felt ready to face them with confidence, courage, and determination. The young pianist had turned a moment of potential humiliation into a triumph of skill, resilience, and heart, and that victory would remain with her forever.